Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and here's tight end start to sit every matchup this week. The first one, the Falcons at the Carolina Panthers on Thursday Night Football. So Kyle Pitts, the last few weeks here, he's been playing a little bit better of football here. And this week here, tight end, not a great position, obviously, in fantasy football. A lot of inconsistent guys. And this week here, you just got to throw him in your starting lineup and hope for the best. I got him as a start. Now to the Panthers side of things, Tommy Tremble, the last couple weeks here, he's been getting more playing time and more receptions and even found the end zone a few weeks ago. Here's Tommy Tremble, but he's still a guy can't count on. Obviously, 10 players at the position than Tommy Tremble, so he's a sit this week. And Ian Thomas, he's pretty much been a non-factor over the last few weeks as well. And he's an easy sit this week. Now to the Seattle Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Germany here. So right now, Noah Fant finally had a good ball game with over 90 yards last week in that game, but besides that, he really hasn't done anything. It might have been a fluky week where they versed the Arizona Cardinal team that gives up the second most fantasy points, obviously, the tight ends on the season. So that's why I think Font had a good game, even though Geno Smith definitely likes spreading that ball out. This week here, I still can't trust Font. I got to see more out of him before I could put him in the starting lineup. And he's a sit this week. Will Disley, he was off to a good start early in the season as a touchdown-dependent tight end. But right now, this week, he's a sit for me. Now to Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cade Otton coming off a good ball game last week here for this Tampa Bay Buc team. And a guy who is a good target of Tom Brady right now. So Brady likes hitting him as a big target in the red zone. We saw it last week to win the game. And this week here, he's going to be in my top 12 at the tight end position. And I have him as a start this week. The next ball game, Denver Broncos at the Titans. Greg Dulcich, so far in the first 3 games of his NFL career, he's got double-digit fantasy points in all of them in PPR leagues. And this week here in a pretty decent matchup versus the Tennessee Titans, he's pretty much him and Cortland Sutton, the only 2 guys that Russell Wilson looks for in this offense. I think Dulcich could have another decent game. I have him probably ranked in the top 10 this week at the tight end position, and he's a guy that could make plays, good yard after catch player as well. We even saw him catch a 38-yard pass in that ball game in Week 8 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. So right now, I like him this week as a start. Austin Hooper, he pretty much hasn't done much for fantasy in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and once again, in an offense that don't really throw the football a lot here, he's a sit this week. Now to the Browns at the Dolphins. David Njoku, we don't know if he's going to come back from the ankle injury in this one, but if he does, he's a tight end I would start in this game. We know he's got big playmaker ability. We know he's a favorite target of Jacoby Brissett. And obviously the tight end, the great security blanket for any quarterback. But Njoku's an athlete. This season's finally been his breakout before he went down with the ankle injury. And if he does come back in a good matchup versus the Dolphins, I would give him the nod this week. Harrison Bryant, no matter what in this one, we haven't seen much out of him with Brissett going to People Jones and Amari Cooper in this offense. So Harrison Bryant, even if he starts with Njoku out, he's a sit. And Mike Gesicki, he's a sit as well for me. This guy, it's either one good game, one bad game, and he's a touchdown-dependent tight end as well. This season, there's more tight ends, obviously, than Mike Gesicki that are at least going to get you 7-8 fantasy points minimum. So Mike Gesicki, there's weeks we've seen him like last week. He had 1 catch in the game for 3 yards, and that's not going to get the job done. And right now, this Dolphin offense is obviously built around Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So Gesicki, he's a week in, week out type of guy where you don't know what you're going to get from him. And at this point, I'm just going to sit him this week. New Orleans Saints at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Taysom Hill over the last couple weeks, the numbers have definitely dropped down, and we know he's a quarterback tight end he qualifies for in most fantasy formats. Obviously in Yahoo Sports, which I play, is where he qualifies at tight end, and he hasn't really got many snaps at quarterback since the injury to Jameis Winston. But anyway, I would give him a start. You never know where Hill could just pop off and have that 12, 15-point fantasy game. And this week, it definitely could be a possibility versus Pittsburgh defense. So right here, I would give Hill a start. Jawan Johnson, the last couple games, he's found the end zone and looked good. But that Monday Night Football one was a fluky one where Marcus Peters thought he was out of bounds, Jawan Johnson, but he toe-tapped the line and he took it to the house for 41 yards. But if he just gets pushed out of bounds over there, he didn't do anything. So it was a fluky touchdown, and he's a sit this week, even though Andy Dalton is starting to warm up to Johnson and get him targets. Pat Freiermuth in this one, he's a start. He's definitely a guy in the top 12 this week. Here's Muth, and he's a guy that's a good target of Kenny Pickett. Pickett likes targeting Pat Freiermuth. More targets obviously might come his way now with Chase Claypool out of town. and traded to the Chicago Bears, and he's pretty much a player each and every week I'm going to have in the lineup. Now the Lions at the Chicago Bears, so Brock Wright, he's played a decent amount in this game in Week 9, and James Mitchell, he found the end zone on 2 catches, 8 yards with the touchdown, but still, you can't trust these guys in this Lion team. I don't know who's going to get the football. I know TJ Hawkinson was traded away at the NFL trade deadline to the Minnesota Vikings, and it's going to open up playing time for one of these guys. But this offense has been inconsistent pretty much the whole season. Besides Jamal Williams and Swift, it's been weeks where even Amon St. Brown really hasn't done much, and I can't trust these guys yet. If they could put 2 or 3 games in a row here where they have good games, then they could be on the radar. But this week, they're both sits, and Cole Kmet, last week, I know he had the monster game with 23 fantasy points, but he's another guy that's just been inconsistent throughout his whole career. This offense is built on running the football and a lot of Justin Fields RPOs and just taking himself direct snaps running the football. So I know Kmet the last 2 weeks has been decent, but 2 weeks ago, if he don't score that touchdown, he only had 3 fantasy points, and last week was a breakout game, no doubt about it, versus Miami. But I got to see more out of Kmet before I plug him into the lineup, and he's still a sit for me. Now to the Vikings at the Buffalo Bills. TJ Hawkinson in his debut with the Minnesota Vikings. Over double-digit fantasy points, healthy amount of targets, and he's a good weapon for this Viking team. And just like I said, it would open the field up for Justin Jefferson even more. And we saw Jefferson have one of his better games in the last month here with that one with TJ Hawkinson making his Vikings debut last week. So he's a start each and every week. Dawson Knox, borderline option. He's pretty much a touchdown-dependent tight end as well as Dawson Knox. And we don't know for sure if Josh Allen's going to play in this ball game, but I think he will. And Dawson Knox this week here, borderline option at best. Like I said, there's better tight ends this week I'd rather have than Cade Otton. I'd rather play over at Dawson Knox. Greg Dulcich, David Njoku if he comes back. And those are just a few guys I would have in the lineup. Texans at the Giants. Right here, not much to say about these tight ends. Jordan Akins, we've seen some flashes out of him, but not much. He's a sit. He's got to be more consistent to be even considered a start. And then Tanner Hudson for this Giant team. He was a guy recommended a couple weeks ago as maybe an ad, because we saw Daniel Bellinger starting to carve a rollout with this Giant team until he got injured with an eye socket injury. So right now, Tanner Hudson got to see a couple more games out of him in this Giant offense, and he's a sit. Now to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs. Evan Ingram last week, where a lot of people thought he was going to have another good ball game for this Jaguar team versus the Raiders. He just didn't do anything in that game, and he left as well with a little bit of a back injury. So this week here, I'm not totally going to sit him. I have him as a borderline option this week here as Evan Ingram. We know he's a talented tight end. We know he can make some plays, but we saw it in his New York Giant days. He'll have a good game, and then he'll disappear for a couple weeks on end, or have a nagging injury that limits him in ball games. And right now, this could be headed this way. Now, Travis Kelce, he's the number 1 tight end this week, no doubt about it. This guy, just a catch machine, touchdown machine. And what could you say? You start him each and every week, no doubt about it. Now, Indianapolis Colts at the Vegas Raiders. Mo Alley-Cox, we haven't seen much out of him or anything on this Colt offense in the passing game the last few weeks. So he's an easy sit. Darren Waller, who knows when he's going to come back to the lineup. But if he does, I like the matchup here for Waller versus Indianapolis Colt team. So obviously, if Waller's back, I got him as a start. And Foster Monroe, if he's going to start again, if Waller's out, he's a borderline option. Because this Raider passing game, it's pretty much been Devontae Adams or nothing for the most part. I know Matt Collins has hit a decent few games. And Foster Monroe, a couple weeks ago, actually had a double-digit fantasy game. But still, he's not a guy I'm going to throw out there and be a definite start. Is Foster Monroe just too inconsistent? Is this Raider offense? He's borderline if Waller's out. Now Zach Ertz and the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. Zach Ertz, he's a start each and every week. The first 8 out of 9 ball games this season. Double-digit fantasy points here for Ertz. And Ertz and DeAndre Hopkins and more, a nice tandem over there for this Cardinal team and Kyler Murray. So Ertz, a big target in the red zone. A guy with great hands, still could run some decent mediocre routes. And this week, he's a start. And Tyler Higbee this week here, he's a sit for me. The last couple weeks, his numbers have fell off big time. And he's banged up as well. A couple weeks ago, he took a hard tackle where he got a stinger and his legs taken out from under him. So right here, I don't think he's 100% as Tyler Higbee. This Ram team has problems on the offensive line blocking. And Matthew Stafford, he just hasn't been accurate and taken a lot of hits as well. So this week here, Higbee's a sit for me. Now to the Dallas Cowboys at the Green Bay Packers. So Dalton Schultz, he's been getting his numbers back up since Dak Prescott has come back to the starting lineup for this Dallas Cowboy team. So this week here in a pretty decent matchup versus the Green Bay Packers, I'll give Dalton Schultz the nod in this one. He still could go out there, a lot of intermediate and short routes where he gets the football from Dak Prescott for those safe security blanket plays. And also a guy that it wouldn't be tough to find the end zone as well in this one. So I got Dalton Schultz as a start this weekend. Robert Tonyan, I mentioned him as a drop over the last few weeks. He's pretty much maxing out his Tonyan, 6-7 fantasy points. This Packer offense is a mess right now. Aaron Rodgers not really spreading the football out to any of his players. And these guys aren't getting open as well, and they got offensive line problems. And now this week here with a tough Dallas Cowboy defensive line that could get to the backfield early and often to Aaron Rodgers here, I think Robert Tonyan, once again, we're going to see 6 or 7 fantasy points. And obviously, he's got no ceiling, really, for a guy I want to start. Now to the Los Angeles Chargers at the San Francisco 49ers. This is a pretty quick one here. Gerald Everett, he's been a good target this season for this Charger team. Keenan Allen, we'll see if he plays. If not, more targets his way. Mike Williams, most likely out, once again with the high ankle sprain. And Gerald Everett, I've said this many times, like a broken record in my video. He's a guy, if he needed to play wide receiver, he could, because he's just that talented, in my opinion, is Gerald Everett. He's got speed, he can run the routes, and we saw it last season in Seattle when he got an opportunity, he put up fantasy numbers. And this season, for the most part, he's been a pretty consistent tight end and a guy to start this week. And George Kittle, he's back on track in this offense, and more attention now is going to Christian McCaffrey with George Kittle. A lot of one-on-one coverage, a lot of the seam wide open here. And this Charger defense really don't stop anyone. The Falcons even scored a decent amount of points last week on this Charger defense. So right here, George Kittle, I have him as a start this week, and he's going to be a top 3 tight end most likely in my rankings. And then to the last game of the week, Monday Night Football, Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles. Logan Thomas, he's a sit for me. He just hasn't done anything all season. He hasn't been healthy, and it's been unfortunate. A couple seasons ago, he was one of the top tight ends in fantasy football. Top 6, top 8 guy was Logan Thomas. But this season, that just hasn't been the case, and he's a sit. And Dallas Goedert, he's up there as an elite tight end this season. You start him each and every week without hesitation. This Philadelphia Eagle offense is a well-oiled machine. Goddard's getting targets. Last week, a monster fantasy game for Goddard, over 20 fantasy points, and he's got that capability of doing that most weeks is Goddard. So this week, he's a start. So that's Week 10 tight end starts to sits every matchup of the fantasy football season.